What if everything you've been told about the beginning of life on Earth is wrong? What if the spark that ignited billions of years of evolution didn't emerge from some primordial soup, but was deliberately placed here by an intelligence so ancient that its very existence challenges everything we think we know about our origins? Picture this for a moment. You're standing in your backyard, looking up at the night sky, those distant stars, those countless worlds spinning through the cosmic dark. What if one of them once harbored beings who looked toward our young planet and made a decision that would shape the entire future of life as we know it? What if we're not just the children of Earth, but the inheritors of a gift from somewhere far beyond our world? If you're fascinated by these kinds of mind-bending possibilities, you're going to want to stick around for what we're about to explore together. This isn't just another science documentary. This is a journey into one of the most controversial and captivating theories about human existence itself. Here's what's really wild about this idea. Scientists have been scratching their heads for decades trying to figure out how life could have possibly emerged from lifeless chemicals in the harsh conditions of early Earth. The mathematical odds are so astronomical that some researchers have started wondering if we're asking the wrong question entirely. Instead of asking how life began here, maybe we should be asking whether it began here at all. But before we dive deep into this rabbit hole, let me paint you a picture of just how bizarre and unlikely our existence really is. Right now, as you're watching this, there are trillions of cells in your body, each one more complex than the most advanced factory ever built by humans. These cellular machines are reading instructions from a molecular code that's more sophisticated than any computer program we've ever created. And somehow, all of this incredible complexity supposedly arose from random chemical reactions in ancient tide pools. Think about that for a second. We're talking about the equivalent of a tornado sweeping through a junkyard and accidentally assembling a Boeing 747. Not just once, but creating an entire fleet of them, all perfectly functional and ready to fly. When you really sit with those odds, it starts to feel less like a scientific explanation and more like a miracle. That's exactly what drove some of the most brilliant minds in science to consider a possibility that sounds like it belongs in a science fiction movie. What if life didn't start here through random chance? What if it was planted here intentionally by an intelligence from another world? Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the kind of theory you'd expect to hear from someone wearing a tinfoil hat at 3 a.m. on a conspiracy podcast. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. One of the scientists who seriously proposed this idea was Francis Crick. You know, the guy who discovered the structure of DNA, the man who unlocked one of the fundamental secrets of life itself, looked at the complexity of what he'd found and said, "This is almost too perfect to have happened by accident." When someone of that caliber starts questioning the official story, it's worth paying attention. Let's break down what we're really talking about here. The traditional view goes something like this. Billions of years ago, Earth was a hostile, violent place. Volcanoes everywhere, toxic atmosphere, constant bombardment from space rocks. But somehow, in the midst of all this chaos, simple chemicals started linking together in increasingly complex ways until, eventually, the first living cell emerged. From there, evolution took over, and here we are today. It's a neat story, and for a long time, it satisfied most scientists. They even did experiments showing that you could create some of the building blocks of life by zapping mixtures of gases with electricity. Problem solved, right? Not quite. As researchers dug deeper, they started finding cracks in this explanation. Creating amino acids in a laboratory is one thing, but getting from those simple building blocks to a fully functioning self-replicating cell, that's like going from having a pile of bricks to constructing the Empire State Building. And somehow it had to happen not just once, but in a way that could survive and reproduce in an environment that would make hell look like a vacation destination. The more scientists studied the problem, the more impossible it seemed. We're not just talking about long odds here. We're talking about odds so mind-bogglingly small that even if you gave the process billions of years and an entire planet to work with, it still shouldn't have happened. And yet, here we are. Life didn't just emerge once and struggle to survive. It exploded into existence with a speed that has researchers scratching their heads. The earliest evidence of life appears in rocks that are only a few 100 million years younger than the Earth itself. In geological terms, that's like saying life appeared almost immediately after conditions became even remotely suitable. If you're trying to solve a puzzle and the pieces don't fit, sometimes you need to step back and consider whether you're looking at the right puzzle in the first place. That's exactly what some scientists started doing when they encountered this problem. What if life didn't start on Earth at all? What if it came from somewhere else? This isn't as crazy as it might sound. We already know that rocks can travel between planets. When a massive asteroid slams into Mars, for example, it can blast chunks of Martian rock into space. Some of those chunks eventually find their way to Earth, carrying with them a record of conditions on the red planet. If rocks can make that journey, why not microscopic life forms hitching a ride? Scientists have discovered that some bacteria are incredibly tough. They can survive in boiling acid, freezing cold, intense radiation, and even the vacuum of space itself. These microscopic survivors are so resilient that they could potentially endure a journey of millions of years drifting through the cosmos, waiting for a chance to land on a suitable world and begin growing again. But here's where things get really interesting. What if this process wasn't random? What if it was directed? Imagine an advanced civilization, millions or even billions of years ahead of us in development. They've mastered space travel, genetics, maybe even the fundamental forces of life itself. They look out at the galaxy and see countless barren worlds, silent and lifeless. They have the power to change that. They have the ability to plant the seeds of life on suitable planets, ensuring that the universe doesn't remain empty. From their perspective, seeding life throughout the galaxy might not be extraordinary at all. It might be as routine as a farmer planting crops in spring. They identify worlds with the right conditions: water, stable climate, protection from radiation, and they introduce carefully selected microorganisms designed to thrive and evolve in those specific environments. Earth, with its perfect distance from the sun, its protective magnetic field, its abundant water, and its geological activity that recycles nutrients, would have been an ideal candidate for such a project. Not a random accident, but a carefully chosen nursery for life. This idea, known as directed panspermia, doesn't just explain why life appeared so quickly on Earth. It also explains some of the puzzling features of life itself. Why does all life on our planet use the same genetic code? Why does DNA seem almost engineered in its elegance and efficiency? Why do we see sudden bursts of complexity in the fossil record as if dormant programs were being activated? If life was seeded intentionally, these patterns start to make sense. We're not looking at the messy random results of chemical accidents. We're looking at the unfolding of a plan that was set in motion long before our planet even existed. But this raises even bigger questions. Who were these ancient gardeners? What motivated them to spread life across the stars? Are they still out there watching the results of their cosmic experiment? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for us? If we're living in a world that was deliberately seeded with life, then every myth, every ancient story, every legend about gods descending from the heavens suddenly takes on a completely different meaning. Think about it. Almost every civilization that's ever existed has stories about beings from the sky who brought knowledge, fire, agriculture, or the very spark of life itself. The ancient Sumerians wrote about the Anunnaki, sky beings who shaped humanity. The Egyptians spoke of gods arriving from distant stars. Across the ocean, the Maya told tales of feathered serpents descending from above to teach civilization. In the mountains of Peru, the Incas described Viracocha, bringing the skills needed for survival. Even Native American tribes across North America have traditions of star people who came to Earth and shared their wisdom. Now, mainstream archaeology typically dismisses these as primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena. Thunder becomes the anger of gods. Earthquakes become the stirring of underground monsters. But what if we've got it backwards? What if these stories aren't mythology at all, but cultural memories of actual encounters with an intelligence far older than human civilization? Picture this scenario. An ancient seeding mission arrives at Earth billions of years ago. They plant the initial spark of life, then periodically return to check on their experiment. Sometimes they intervene directly, nudging evolution in certain directions, sharing knowledge with early human societies, ensuring their project stays on track. These encounters get passed down through generations, becoming the foundation myths of every culture on the planet. It sounds incredible, but consider this. Why would completely isolated civilizations, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, all independently develop stories about beings descending from the sky? Why do these myths share such remarkably similar themes across cultures that had no contact with each other? There's something else that's absolutely fascinating about these ancient stories. They don't just talk about the past. Many of them contain promises of return. The sky beings who brought knowledge often said they would come back. This theme repeats across continents and centuries, suggesting that our ancestors didn't see these encounters as finished chapters, but as ongoing relationships. If directed panspermia is real, then these prophecies make perfect sense. A civilization advanced enough to seed life across the galaxy wouldn't just plant and abandon their projects. They'd monitor progress, occasionally checking in on their experiments, and they'd probably have plans for what comes next. But let's dig deeper into the biological evidence itself, because this is where things get truly mind-bending. When scientists first started mapping the human genome, they expected to find a messy, chaotic collection of genetic information shaped by millions of years of random mutations. Instead, they discovered something that looked suspiciously like engineered code. DNA doesn't just store information. It stores it with built-in error correction, redundancy, and repair mechanisms that would make any computer programmer jealous. It's as if someone designed a data storage system that could maintain its integrity across billions of years of copying and environmental stress. The more we study genetics, the more it resembles sophisticated technology rather than the accidental byproduct of chemical evolution. Then there are the sudden leaps in complexity that appear throughout evolutionary history. For billions of years, life on Earth was relatively simple. Single-celled organisms, basic multicellular creatures, nothing too spectacular. Then, around 540 million years ago, something extraordinary happened in what scientists call the Cambrian Explosion. Complex life forms with shells, eyes, nervous systems, and segmented bodies appeared almost overnight in geological terms. Traditional evolution suggests gradual change over vast time periods, but the Cambrian Explosion looks more like someone flipped a switch, activating dormant programs encoded in the DNA of early organisms. It's as if the genetic seeds planted billions of years earlier suddenly began expressing their full potential. The same pattern repeats throughout the fossil record. The emergence of complex cells with nuclei and specialized organelles. The development of photosynthesis. The leap from sea to land. Each transition represents a quantum jump in complexity that's difficult to explain through purely random processes. And then there's us, humans. Our cognitive abilities developed at a pace that's absolutely staggering from an evolutionary perspective. Within a relatively brief window, our ancestors went from using simple stone tools to creating art, developing language, building civilizations, and eventually reaching into space. Our brains aren't just larger than those of our primate relatives. They're structured differently, optimized for abstract thinking, symbolic reasoning, and technological innovation. Some researchers have wondered if there's something unique about human development that goes beyond normal evolutionary processes. Did environmental pressures alone account for our rapid cognitive advancement? Or was there some kind of additional influence, some external factor that gave our species a unique trajectory? If Earth was seeded intentionally, then humanity might represent the culmination of a project that began billions of years ago. We could be the intended result, the flowering of genetic potential that was encoded into life from the very beginning. Our intelligence, our curiosity, our drive to explore and understand the universe around us might not be accidents, but features deliberately programmed into our biological heritage. This brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of the directed Panspermia hypothesis. What was the ultimate goal? Why would an advanced civilization invest the enormous effort required to seed life across the galaxy? The simplest explanation is survival. Even the most advanced civilizations face existential threats. Stars burn out. Planets become uninhabitable. Cosmic catastrophes can wipe out entire worlds. By spreading life throughout the galaxy, these ancient gardeners would have ensured that something of their legacy would survive, even if their home worlds perished. But there might be deeper motivations at work. Perhaps they viewed life itself as inherently valuable, worth preserving and propagating regardless of its origin. Maybe they saw the universe as too vast and beautiful to remain empty, and they took it upon themselves to fill it with living, thinking beings. Or maybe the goal was continuation. Perhaps intelligence naturally seeks to replicate itself, to ensure that consciousness doesn't vanish from the cosmos. By seeding worlds like Earth, they were creating the next generation of space-faring civilizations, each of which would eventually face the same choice: keep life confined to a single world, or carry it forward to new planets and new possibilities. If that's the case, then we're not just the products of ancient seeding. We're the inheritors of a cosmic responsibility. Our emerging ability to travel to other planets, to understand genetics, to potentially terraform barren worlds might not be coincidences, but the awakening of our true purpose. Think about where human technology is heading. We're already talking seriously about missions to Mars, about establishing permanent colonies beyond Earth. We're developing the tools to modify organisms for survival in alien environments. We're beginning to understand how to transform hostile planets into gardens capable of supporting life. We might be on the verge of becoming the next seeders, the next generation in an unbroken chain stretching back billions of years. Every step we take toward becoming a spacefaring species could be the unfolding of a plan set in motion long before our planet even formed. The implications are staggering. We're not just random products of chemical evolution, struggling alone in an empty universe. We're part of something vast, something purposeful, something that connects us to intelligences and civilizations we can barely imagine. But with that connection comes responsibility. If we truly are the inheritors of an ancient seeding project, then every choice we make about our future takes on cosmic significance. The rockets we build, the planets we explore, the life forms we might one day carry to distant worlds, all of it could be part of a pattern that stretches back through deep time. But here's what really gets me thinking late at night. If this theory is true, if we're living on a world that was deliberately chosen and cultivated by an intelligence far older than human civilization, then we're not just passive recipients of this gift. We're active participants in something that's still unfolding. Consider what's happening right now in laboratories around the world. Scientists are creating synthetic life forms, engineering bacteria that can survive in extreme environments, developing organisms that could potentially transform the atmosphere of Mars. We're not just studying life anymore. We're learning to create it, to modify it, to direct its evolution in ways that would have seemed like magic just a few decades ago. These aren't random technological developments. They're exactly the kinds of capabilities you'd need if you wanted to seed life on other worlds. It's as if we're being prepared for something, as if dormant instructions in our DNA are finally being expressed through our growing mastery of biology and space travel. And the timing is remarkable. We're developing these abilities at precisely the moment when we're also discovering thousands of planets orbiting other stars. Our telescopes are revealing worlds in habitable zones, places where liquid water could exist, environments that might be suitable for life. It's almost as if the universe is presenting us with opportunities just as we're developing the tools to take advantage of them. But there's something else that makes this whole scenario even more fascinating. If directed panspermia is real, then we might not be the only seeded world in our cosmic neighborhood. Mars, with its ancient riverbeds and evidence of past water activity, could have been another target for the same seeding project. The subsurface oceans of Europa and Enceladus might harbor life forms that share our genetic heritage. Imagine the moment when we finally detect life elsewhere in our solar system and discover that it uses the same genetic code as life on Earth. That single discovery would transform our understanding of everything. We'd know beyond any doubt that we're not alone, that we're part of a family of worlds connected by invisible threads reaching back to a common origin. But what about the seeders themselves? Where are they now? This is perhaps the most haunting aspect of the entire hypothesis. If an ancient intelligence did plant life throughout the galaxy, they might be long gone. Their civilizations could have risen and fallen while their biological projects were still taking root on distant worlds. We might be living monuments to beings who vanished into the cosmic dark billions of years ago. Every tree, every animal, every human being could be a kind of memorial to intelligence so ancient that their very existence has been erased by time. In that case, we're not just the products of their work. We're their legacy, the continuation of something they began but never lived to see completed. The alternative is equally mind-bending. What if they're still out there? What if somewhere across the galaxy there are beings who remember the seeding of Earth, who have been patiently watching our development for millions of years? They might know things about our origins that we can barely imagine. They might have answers to questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. And if they're still watching, they're probably asking themselves the same question that keeps me up at night. What kind of species will humanity become? Will we follow in their footsteps, carrying life to new worlds and ensuring the continuation of the cosmic garden? Or will we turn inward, squandering our potential and breaking the chain that connects us to something far greater than ourselves? The evidence for directed panspermia isn't definitive. It can't be, given the vast scales of time and space involved, but the patterns are there for anyone willing to look. The rapid emergence of life on Earth, the elegant sophistication of DNA, the sudden bursts of complexity in evolutionary history, the universal myths of beings descending from the sky, the remarkable suitability of our planet for supporting not just life, but intelligent life, capable of reaching for the stars. Each piece of evidence might have conventional explanations, but when you step back and look at the whole picture, something extraordinary emerges, a story that's far stranger and more wonderful than anything we could have imagined. And we're living right in the middle of that story. Every day we're making choices that will determine how the next chapter unfolds. The research we fund, the missions we launch, the questions we ask about our place in the universe, all of it matters more than we might realize. Here's what really blows my mind about this whole concept. If directed panspermia is true, then the very fact that we're capable of considering this possibility, that we can look up at the stars and wonder if we came from somewhere else, might be exactly what our ancient benefactors were hoping for. Our curiosity, our drive to explore and understand, could be their greatest achievement. Think about it. What would be the ultimate success for a civilization that seeded life throughout the galaxy? It wouldn't just be the emergence of complex organisms or even intelligent species. It would be the development of intelligence capable of recognizing its own cosmic heritage and choosing to continue the work. We're rapidly approaching that threshold. Our space technology is advancing exponentially. Our understanding of genetics and synthetic biology is exploding. We're developing the theoretical frameworks for terraforming planets and establishing self-sustaining colonies beyond Earth. Within the next few decades, we might have all the tools necessary to begin our own seeding projects. But we also face unprecedented challenges. Climate change, resource depletion, political instability, the very real possibility that we might destroy ourselves before we get the chance to carry life beyond our home world. The window of opportunity might be narrower than we think. If the directed panspermia hypothesis is correct, then we're living through one of the most critical periods in the history of life itself. We're the first generation of humans with the potential to become a truly space-faring species, but we might also be among the last if we don't make the right choices. The ancient intelligence that may have seeded our world couldn't have guaranteed our success. They could plant the initial spark of life. They could encode potential into our DNA. But ultimately, they had to trust that we would choose to fulfill that potential. They had to have faith that intelligence, once it emerged, would recognize its cosmic responsibility and act on it. That's the test we're facing right now. Not just as a species, but as inheritors of something precious beyond measure. The gift of life, the spark of consciousness, the ability to look up at the stars and see not just distant lights, but future homes for the continuing story of existence. And here's the beautiful thing about this possibility. Even if we never find definitive proof that Earth was seeded by an ancient intelligence, even if the truth remains forever hidden in the depths of time, the very idea changes how we see ourselves and our responsibilities. We stop being just another species competing for resources on a single planet. We become part of something cosmic, something that connects us to the deepest mysteries of existence. We become gardeners in training, preparing to tend new worlds and ensure that the universe continues to bloom with life and intelligence. Whether directed panspermia is fact or fantasy, it points us toward the same conclusion. We have a choice to make. We can remain earthbound, focused only on our immediate concerns and local conflicts. Or we can reach for something greater, something that honors the incredible journey that brought us to this moment. The seeds of our cosmic future are already planted in our technology, our science, our growing understanding of life itself. The question isn't whether we have the capability to spread life to other worlds. The question is whether we have the wisdom and the will to do it. And that decision, that choice between staying home or reaching for the stars, it's almost as if there's a biological timer built into life itself. For vast periods, organisms remain relatively simple, then suddenly, without warning, they leap forward into new levels of sophistication. The development of complex cells with nuclei, the invention of photosynthesis, the transition from water to land. Each jump represents a quantum leap that seems to violate the gradual pace we'd expect from natural selection alone. And then there are the extremophiles. These are organisms that thrive in conditions that would kill almost anything else. They live in boiling hot springs, in acidic environments that would dissolve metal, in the depths of the ocean where pressure would crush a submarine, even in the vacuum of space itself. When scientists first discovered these creatures, they assumed they were evolutionary oddballs, life forms that had somehow adapted to survive in Earth's most hostile environments. But what if we've got it backwards? What if these aren't organisms that adapted to extreme conditions, but rather organisms that were designed for extreme conditions from the very beginning? If you were planning to seed life across the galaxy, you'd want organisms that could survive the journey through space, endure radiation, handle temperature extremes, and establish themselves in environments that might be very different from Earth. These extremophiles might not be evolutionary accidents. They could be the original seeding stock, the hardy pioneers designed to establish footholds on worlds throughout the cosmos. The fact that they can survive conditions that would kill ordinary life forms isn't a quirk of evolution. It's a feature. Consider the tardigrade, one of the most remarkable creatures on our planet. These microscopic animals can survive temperatures near absolute zero and hot enough to boil water. They can withstand radiation levels that would be fatal to humans 1,000 times over. They can live for decades without food or water. And most incredibly, they can survive in the vacuum of space for extended periods. Scientists have called them the most indestructible animals on Earth. But what if that's not quite right? What if they're not Earth animals at all, but cosmic travelers that arrived here long ago as part of a seeding mission? Their extraordinary resilience wouldn't be the result of adapting to Earth's conditions. It would be evidence of their origins in the depths of space. The same pattern appears when you look at the genetic code itself. Every organism on Earth, from the simplest bacteria to the most complex mammals, uses essentially the same genetic language. The same 4 chemical letters, the same way of translating genetic information into proteins, the same fundamental mechanisms for reproduction and repair. This universality has always puzzled biologists. If life arose independently in different locations, you'd expect to see variations in the genetic code. Different chemical systems, alternative ways of storing and transmitting information. Instead, it's as if every living thing on Earth graduated from the same molecular school, learned the same biological language, inherited the same instruction manual, From a directed panspermia perspective, this makes perfect sense. If life was seeded intentionally, the seeders would have used a standardized system, a proven genetic platform that they knew could support complex development over billions of years. They wouldn't have scattered random experiments across the galaxy. They would have used their best, most refined biotechnology. But here's where things get really interesting. Hidden within the vast stretches of DNA that scientists once dismissed as junk, researchers are finding increasingly sophisticated regulatory systems. Genetic switches that control when and how genes are expressed, error correction mechanisms that prevent mutations from accumulating, backup systems that can compensate when primary functions fail. The more we understand about genetics, the more it resembles advanced engineering rather than the messy results of random mutation. It's as if someone took great care to build redundancy and reliability into the system, ensuring that it could maintain its integrity across vast spans of time. Some researchers have even suggested that hidden patterns might be encoded in our DNA, messages or signatures left by whoever designed the system. While no definitive evidence has been found yet, the very fact that serious scientists are looking tells you something about how sophisticated and purposeful our genetic inheritance appears to be. Then there's the mystery of consciousness itself. Of all the puzzles surrounding human evolution, the emergence of self-aware intelligence might be the most difficult to explain through purely natural processes. Consciousness isn't just another biological function like digestion or circulation. It represents a fundamental leap into something entirely different. Think about what consciousness actually means. It's the ability to be aware of your own existence, to contemplate abstract concepts, to imagine possibilities that don't yet exist. It's what allows you to watch this video and wonder about your own origins. It's what drives us to build telescopes and rockets, to ask questions about the nature of reality itself. From an evolutionary perspective, consciousness is expensive. Big brains require enormous amounts of energy. They make childbirth dangerous and prolonged childhood necessary. For most of our evolutionary history, the costs of consciousness probably outweighed the benefits. Yet somehow, intelligence not only emerged, but flourished, unless, of course, consciousness wasn't just an accidental byproduct of evolution. What if it was the intended outcome, the goal that the entire seeding project was designed to achieve? In that case, every step in our development, from the first complex cells to the emergence of human civilization, would be part of an unfolding program encoded into life from the very beginning. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of the directed panspermia hypothesis. If it's true, then human culture itself might carry echoes of our cosmic origins. Those ancient myths and legends we talked about earlier might not just be distorted memories of contact with the seeders. They might be attempts to preserve essential information across vast spans of time. Consider how many creation stories begin with chaos, darkness, or emptiness, then describe the arrival of order, light, and life from above. The pattern repeats across cultures that had no contact with each other. Hebrew Genesis, Egyptian creation myths, Hindu cosmology, Native American traditions, they all tell variations of the same story. Formless void transformed by the intervention of cosmic intelligence? What if these aren't just metaphorical descriptions of natural processes, but cultural memories of actual events? The seeding of Earth might have been witnessed and remembered by early life forms in some way, passed down through genetic or cultural inheritance until it became the foundation of human mythology. Even more intriguing are the recurring themes of return and reunion. Many ancient traditions speak not just of gods or sky beings who came in the past, but of their eventual return. The second coming in Christianity, the return of Quetzalcoatl in Aztec mythology, the coming of the fifth world in Hopi prophecy. These aren't just spiritual concepts. They might be echoes of promises made long ago, commitments from the Cedars to check back on their cosmic gardens. If directed panspermia is real, then these prophecies might have been more than religious hope. They could have been actual plans, schedules for periodic monitoring of seeded worlds. The fact that we're now approaching the technological capability to detect and communicate with advanced civilizations might not be coincidental timing. We might be approaching the moment when the an unknown error occurred during script generation. Please try again. Seeders decide it's time to make contact again. But let's step back for a moment and consider what this would mean for our understanding of human history itself. If Earth was deliberately chosen and cultivated by an ancient intelligence, then our planet's remarkable habitability isn't just lucky coincidence. It's the result of careful selection. Earth sits in what astronomers call the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, but just right for liquid water to exist. We have a magnetic field that protects us from deadly solar radiation. Our moon stabilizes our climate and creates tides that may have been crucial for early life. We have plate tectonics that recycle nutrients and regulate temperature over geological time scales. Any one of these features alone would be fortunate. Having all of them together seems almost impossibly perfect. Unless, of course, perfection was exactly what the Cedars were looking for. They wouldn't have chosen just any random planet for their experiment. They would have searched for worlds that offered the best possible conditions for life to not just survive, but flourish and eventually develop intelligence. From this perspective, Earth wasn't just a lucky accident waiting for life to find it. It was a carefully selected nursery, chosen specifically because it had everything needed to nurture the growth of complex organisms over billions of years. And the timing of life's emergence supports this idea. The geological record shows that life appeared remarkably quickly after Earth became habitable. For the first 500 million years of our planet's existence, it was bombarded by asteroids and comets in what scientists call the late heavy bombardment. The surface was molten, the atmosphere was toxic, and any life that might have emerged would have been sterilized repeatedly. But as soon as that violent period ended, life appeared. Not gradually, over hundreds of millions of years, but within perhaps 50 million years of when conditions became stable. In geological terms, that's virtually instantaneous. It's exactly what you'd expect if life didn't have to evolve from scratch, but was introduced as soon as the environment could support it. The rapid appearance of life becomes even more significant when you consider what happened next. For billions of years, Earth was dominated by simple, single-celled organisms. Then, around 2 billion years ago, something extraordinary happened. Complex cells with nuclei and specialized internal structures suddenly appeared. This wasn't a gradual transition. It was a quantum leap in complexity that transformed the possibilities for life on our planet. Scientists call this the origin of eukaryotic cells, and it's one of the most important events in the history of life. Without it, we'd still have a planet covered in bacterial mats. No plants, no animals, no intelligence. The conventional explanation is that one cell somehow engulfed another, and instead of digesting it, they formed a permanent partnership that became the foundation for all complex life. But the odds of such an event happening by chance are astronomically small. It would require not just the right cells coming together, but also the complex biochemical machinery needed to integrate their functions, share resources, and reproduce as a unified organism. The whole process seems far too coordinated and sophisticated to be the result of a random accident. Unless it wasn't random at all. If life was seeded with a program for development, then the emergence of complex cells might have been a predetermined step, triggered when conditions were right. The genetic instructions for this transition could have been dormant in simple organisms for billions of years, waiting for the proper environmental signals to activate. This pattern of dormancy followed by sudden activation appears repeatedly in the history of life. The Cambrian Explosion is just the most dramatic example. Around 540 million years ago, life forms with hard shells, complex eyes, nervous systems, and sophisticated body plans appeared in the fossil record with breathtaking speed. It's as if someone flipped a switch and activated programs that had been waiting in the genetic code for billions of years. Traditional evolution suggests that these innovations should have appeared gradually, with countless intermediate forms connecting simple and complex organisms. Instead, we see sudden bursts of creativity, moments when life seems to reinvent itself almost overnight. It's exactly what you'd expect if evolution was guided by predetermined instructions rather than left entirely to chance. The same pattern appears in human development. For millions of years, our ancestors made slow progress, gradually developing larger brains and more sophisticated tools. Then, within the last 100,000 years, something changed. Humans began creating art, developing complex language, building permanent settlements, and eventually reaching into space. Our cognitive abilities didn't evolve gradually over millions of years. They exploded into existence with a speed that has evolutionary biologists scratching their heads. It's as if dormant potentials encoded in our DNA suddenly activated, transforming us from just another primate species into something capable of contemplating the stars. But here's what's really mind-bending about this whole scenario. If directed panspermia is true, if we're living in a world that was deliberately seeded and guided by an ancient intelligence, then we might be approaching the moment when our role in the cosmic story becomes clear. Think about where human technology is heading. We're developing the ability to modify genetic codes, to create synthetic organisms, to survive in space for extended periods. We're building rockets capable of reaching other planets and telescopes that can detect worlds orbiting distant stars. We're even beginning to discuss seriously the possibility of terraforming Mars and establishing permanent colonies beyond Earth. These aren't just random technological developments. They're exactly the capabilities you'd need if you wanted to continue the work of seeding life throughout the galaxy. It's almost as if we're being prepared for something, as if instructions encoded in our DNA millions of years ago are finally being expressed through our growing mastery of biology and space travel. And the timing is remarkable. We're developing these abilities at precisely the moment when we're also discovering that the universe is filled with potentially habitable planets. Our space telescopes have revealed thousands of worlds orbiting other stars, many of them in zones where liquid water could exist. The galaxy isn't empty. It's filled with opportunities for life, waiting for someone to take advantage of them. We might be that someone. We might be the next generation of seeders, inheriting a responsibility that stretches back billions of years. The ancient intelligence that planted life on Earth might have always intended for us to eventually carry that gift to other worlds, continuing a cycle that began long before our solar system even formed. But with that possibility comes an enormous weight of responsibility. If we truly are the inheritors of a cosmic seeding project, then every choice we make about our future has implications that extend far beyond our own species or even our own planet. The rockets we're building, the genetic technologies we're developing, the questions we're asking about life in the universe, all of it could be part of a pattern that connects us to intelligence and purpose on a scale we can barely comprehend. We might not just be products of evolution, but participants in something that's been unfolding for billions of years. And that brings us to perhaps the most profound question of all. If this theory is correct, if we're living on a world that was deliberately chosen and cultivated by beings far older and more advanced than ourselves, what does that mean for how we should live our lives? It means that every step we take toward becoming a spacefaring civilization, every breakthrough in genetics and biology, every moment when we choose cooperation over conflict, might be the fulfillment of a plan set in motion before our planet even existed. We're not just random products of chemical evolution struggling alone in an empty universe. We're part of something vast and purposeful, something that connects us to the deepest mysteries of existence itself. Whether or not we ever find definitive proof of directed panspermia, the very possibility changes everything. It transforms us from accidental byproducts of chemistry into conscious participants in a cosmic story that began billions of years ago and might continue for billions more. The seeds of our future are already planted in our technology, our curiosity, our drive to explore and understand. The question isn't whether we have the capability to carry life beyond Earth. The question is whether we have the wisdom and determination to honor what might be the greatest gift ever given, and to ensure that it continues to flourish among the stars. But there's something else we need to consider, something that might be the most important piece of this puzzle. If we're truly the inheritors of an ancient seeding project, then our current moment in history isn't just another chapter in human development. It might be the chapter everything else was building toward. Right now, as you're watching this, we're living through what could be the most critical transition in the entire history of life on Earth. For the first time since that initial spark was planted billions of years ago, we have the technological capability to carry life beyond our home world. We're not just talking about it anymore. We're actually doing it. NASA is planning permanent bases on Mars. Private companies are developing spacecraft that could carry thousands of people to other planets. Scientists are engineering organisms that could survive in alien environments, transform hostile atmospheres, and establish the foundations for entirely new ecosystems. We're literally on the verge of becoming the next Cedars. But here's what keeps me up at night. What if this transition comes with a test? What if the ancient intelligence that may have planted life here knew that eventually their experiment would reach this crossroads? They couldn't guarantee that we'd make the right choices. They could give us the tools, encode the potential into our DNA, but ultimately they had to trust that when the moment came, we'd choose to carry life forward rather than turn inward and destroy ourselves. Think about the challenges we're facing right now. Climate change threatening to destabilize our entire civilization. Political divisions that seem to grow deeper every year. The very real possibility that we might exhaust our resources or trigger conflicts that could set us back centuries, maybe permanently. We're racing against time, and we might not even realize it. The window for becoming a truly space-faring species might be narrower than we think. If we don't make the leap within the next few decades, we might not get another chance for thousands of years, if ever. From this perspective, every launch to Mars isn't just a scientific mission. It's a step toward fulfilling what might be our cosmic destiny. Every breakthrough in synthetic biology isn't just academic research. It's preparation for the moment when we'll need to adapt life to survive in environments that don't exist anywhere on Earth. And every time we choose cooperation over conflict, knowledge over ignorance, hope over fear, we're honoring what might be the greatest gift ever given to any species in the history of the universe. But let's zoom out even further, because there's an aspect of this story that's almost too vast to comprehend. If directed panspermia is real, then Earth isn't unique. Somewhere out there, scattered across the galaxy, there might be thousands or even millions of other worlds that were seeded by the same ancient intelligence. Imagine that for a moment. Planets we've never seen, orbiting stars whose light is just reaching us now, where the same cosmic experiment is playing out in entirely different ways. Some of those worlds might still be in their early stages, dominated by simple organisms slowly evolving toward complexity. Others might be far ahead of us, their intelligent species already spreading life to new worlds of their own. We could be part of an unimaginably vast family, connected not by geography, but by genetics, by shared origins that stretch back to the same primordial seed. Every time we look up at the night sky, we might be looking at distant relatives we don't even know exist yet. And here's the beautiful part. If we succeed in becoming a spacefaring species, If we manage to establish life on Mars and eventually reach the stars ourselves, we might one day encounter these other branches of the cosmic family tree. Imagine the moment when human explorers land on a distant world and discover life forms that share our genetic code, that carry the same molecular signatures of ancient seeding. That discovery would transform everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. We'd realize that we're not alone, not just in the sense of finding alien life, but in finding cosmic siblings, other experiments from the same ancient laboratory, other flowers blooming in the same vast garden. But there's another possibility that's equally profound. What if we never encounter the original seeders? What if they completed their work billions of years ago and then moved on to other projects, other galaxies, other dimensions of existence we can't even imagine? In that case, we become more than just the inheritors of their gift. We become its guardians, responsible for ensuring that their legacy continues. Every world we seed, every spark of life we carry to a distant planet becomes a memorial to intelligence so ancient that even their names have been erased by time. There's something deeply moving about that possibility. It means that every step we take toward the stars isn't just about human survival or exploration. It's about honoring beings we'll never meet, continuing work they began when our solar system was nothing but cosmic dust. And maybe that's the real test. Maybe the ancient seeders knew that true intelligence isn't just about developing technology or solving problems. It's about recognizing your place in something larger than yourself and choosing to serve that greater purpose, even when no one is watching, even when no reward is promised. If that's true, then our current moment becomes even more significant. We're not just deciding whether humanity will survive or expand into space. We're deciding whether we're worthy of the gift we've been given. We're proving whether intelligence, once it emerges, naturally gravitates toward creation and growth, or whether it turns inward and destroys itself. The evidence is still being written. Every choice we make about funding space exploration, supporting scientific research, working together across national boundaries, all of it contributes to the final answer. We're literally deciding through our actions right now whether the cosmic experiment that began with our seeding will continue to the next phase. But here's what gives me hope. The very fact that we're capable of asking these questions, that we can look at the patterns in biology and evolution and wonder if there's something more than random chance at work, might be exactly what our ancient benefactors were hoping for. Think about it. What would be the ultimate success for a civilization that seeded life throughout the galaxy? It wouldn't just be the emergence of intelligent species. It would be the emergence of intelligence that could recognize its own cosmic heritage and choose to continue the work. We're approaching that threshold faster than ever before. Our understanding of genetics is exploding. Our space technology is advancing exponentially. Our ability to modify organisms and adapt them to new environments is becoming almost magical in its sophistication. Within the next few decades, we might have all the tools necessary to begin our own seeding projects. We could send robotic probes carrying carefully designed microorganisms to potentially habitable planets around nearby stars. We could establish self-sustaining colonies that would serve as stepping stones for spreading life throughout the galaxy. The ancient cycle could continue, with humanity playing the role that some unknown intelligence played for us. Billions of years ago, we could become the gardeners, the planters of seeds, the spreaders of life and consciousness throughout the cosmos. But that future isn't guaranteed. We still face enormous challenges that could derail our progress or even end our story entirely. The next few decades will determine whether we fulfill our potential or join the countless species that have gone extinct without ever realizing their cosmic significance. The choice is ours. We can remain earthbound, focused only on our immediate concerns and local conflicts. Or we can reach for something greater, something that honors the incredible journey that brought us to this moment. The seeds of our cosmic future are already planted in our technology, our science, our growing understanding of life itself. The question isn't whether we have the capability to spread life to other worlds. The question is whether we have the wisdom and the will to do it. And that question, that choice between staying home or reaching for the stars, might be the final exam in a test that began 4 billion years ago. The ancient intelligence that may have seeded our world couldn't provide the answers. They could only give us the tools and trust that when the time came, we'd know what to do with them. That time is now. The test is happening. And every day we delay, every opportunity we miss, every moment we waste on divisions instead of unity, we risk failing not just ourselves, but the cosmic heritage that flows through every cell in our bodies. The story of directed panspermia might never be proven beyond doubt. The ancient seeders might have covered their tracks too well, or time itself might have erased the evidence. But even if we never know for certain where we came from, we can still choose where we're going. We can choose to be worthy of the gift of consciousness, regardless of how we received it. We can choose to spread life and intelligence throughout the galaxy, ensuring that the universe continues to bloom with awareness and purpose. We can choose to become the ancestors that future civilizations will look back on with gratitude, the ones who carried the torch when it mattered most. The question isn't just whether Earth was planted by an ancient intelligence. The question is whether we'll plant the next worlds ourselves, continuing a story that might be far older and more magnificent than we ever dared imagine. And right now, in this moment, as you're watching this and thinking about these possibilities, you're part of writing that answer. Your choices, your support for science and exploration, your willingness to think beyond the boundaries of our single planet, all of it matters more than you might realize. We're not just observers of this cosmic story. We're its authors, writing the next chapter with every decision we make. And if we choose wisely, if we reach for the stars with the same determination that brought life to Earth in the first place, then maybe, just maybe, we'll prove worthy of being called the children of the cosmos. The seeds are waiting. The stars are calling. And the next chapter of the greatest story ever told is ours to write. What happens when a civilization becomes advanced enough to seed life across the galaxy, but then faces its own extinction? This question haunts me because It might explain one of the most puzzling aspects of our universe. Where are they now? If directed panspermia is real, if ancient intelligence really did plant the seeds of life on Earth billions of years ago, then we have to confront an uncomfortable truth. Those cedars might be gone. Not just absent, not just hiding, but completely extinct. Their stars could have burned out, their planets could have been consumed by cosmic catastrophes, their entire species could have vanished into the silence of deep time. Think about what that means for us. We might be living memorials to beings who died before our sun even formed. Every flower that blooms, every bird that sings, every human thought that reaches toward the stars could be an echo of intelligence that no longer exists anywhere in the universe. There's something both heartbreaking and inspiring about that possibility. It means that we're not just products of their work. We're their continuation. We're the part of them that survived when everything else was lost. In a very real sense, they live on through us, through every choice we make about our future. But here's what really gets to me. If the original seeders are gone, then we might be inheriting more than just their biological legacy. We might be inheriting their responsibility to ensure that life doesn't end with us. Imagine being the last member of an ancient family, carrying forward traditions and knowledge that would die if you failed to pass them on. That's the position we might be in right now. We could be the guardians of something precious beyond measure, something that has already survived one extinction and can't afford to survive another. This changes everything about how we should think about our current challenges. Climate change, political conflicts, resource depletion, all of these threats aren't just dangers to human civilization. They're threats to a cosmic heritage that might be billions of years old. If we fail, if we don't make it to the stars, we might be breaking a chain that stretches back to the very beginnings of complex life in the galaxy. But there's another possibility that's even more mind-bending. What if the cedars aren't extinct at all? What if they're still out there, but so advanced that we can't even recognize them as living beings? Think about the difference between us and bacteria. To a microorganism, we might as well be forces of nature. Our intentions, our technology, our very existence operates on scales so vast that bacteria couldn't comprehend us even if they tried. We shape their entire world without them ever knowing we exist. Now imagine a civilization that's as far ahead of us as we are ahead of bacteria. They might be all around us, influencing events in ways we can't detect, guiding the development of intelligence across the galaxy through methods so sophisticated that they appear to us as natural processes. From their perspective, direct contact might not just be unnecessary, it might be counterproductive. Just as a parent eventually has to let their children make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons, perhaps these cosmic gardeners have to step back and let their seeded worlds develop independently. But that doesn't mean they're not watching. That doesn't mean they don't care about the outcome. Consider this scenario. Right now, as humanity stands on the threshold of becoming a spacefaring species, we might be approaching a moment that's been anticipated for billions of years. The moment when one of their experiments finally succeeds in developing the capability to continue the seeding process. If that's true, then everything happening in our world right now, our technological breakthroughs, our growing understanding of genetics and space travel, our increasing awareness of planets around other stars, might not be coincidences. They might be signs that we're approaching graduation from a cosmic university we didn't even know we were attending. The test isn't whether we can solve differential equations or build faster rockets. The test is whether we can recognize our place in something larger than ourselves and choose to serve that greater purpose. Whether we can move beyond the petty conflicts and short-term thinking that have defined most of human history and embrace our role as carriers of life to new worlds. And here's what's beautiful about this possibility. Even if we never make direct contact with our cosmic ancestors, even if they remain forever invisible to us, we can still honor their legacy by continuing their work. Every mission to Mars, every breakthrough in astrobiology, every moment when we choose cooperation over conflict brings us closer to fulfilling what might be our ultimate destiny. Not just to survive as a species, but to ensure that life itself continues to spread and flourish throughout the universe. But let's get practical for a moment. What would it actually look like for humanity to become the next Seeders? We're already taking the first tentative steps. Scientists are developing organisms that could survive in the harsh environment of Mars, bacteria that could potentially transform the Martian atmosphere over thousands of years. We're building rockets capable of carrying substantial payloads to other planets. We're identifying potentially habitable worlds around nearby stars. Within the next century, we might have the technology to send robotic probes carrying carefully designed microorganisms to planets dozens of light years away. These cosmic seeds would travel for thousands of years before reaching their destinations, but once they arrived, they could begin the slow work of establishing life in environments that have been barren for billions of years. Imagine the moment when one of those probes lands on a distant world and releases its cargo. Microscopic organisms, descendants of Earth life, but adapted for alien conditions, taking their first tentative steps on soil that has never known the touch of biology. It would be one of the most significant moments in the history of life itself. But we're not just talking about bacteria. As our technology advances, we might eventually be able to send more complex organisms, plants that could establish the foundation for entire ecosystems, maybe even animals that could diversify and evolve over millions of years into forms we can't even imagine. And eventually, perhaps, we might send ourselves, not just as explorers or colonists, but as gardeners, tending new worlds and ensuring that life takes root in environments that would otherwise remain forever silent. The timeline for all of this might be longer than any individual human lifespan, but it's not beyond the reach of our species. We're already living through the early stages of this transformation. The rockets being built today, the genetic technologies being developed in laboratories around the world, the international cooperation emerging around space exploration, all of it is laying the foundation for humanity's role as cosmic seeders. But there's something else we need to consider, something that might be the most important factor of all. If we're going to carry life to other worlds, we need to make sure we're carrying the right kind of life. This isn't just about biological organisms. It's about consciousness, intelligence, the spark of awareness that makes life more than just chemistry. When we eventually establish colonies on Mars or send probes to distant stars, we won't just be spreading Earth's DNA. We'll be spreading Earth's culture, values, and ways of thinking. That's an enormous responsibility. The choices we make about how to organize our societies, how to treat our environment, how to resolve conflicts and pursue knowledge, all of these decisions will influence the kind of civilization we carry to other worlds. If we spread a culture of violence, exploitation, and short-term thinking, we might succeed in establishing human colonies throughout the galaxy, but we'll also be spreading the seeds of future conflicts and catastrophes. If we spread a culture of cooperation, sustainability, and long-term planning, we might help ensure that intelligence continues to flourish for millions of years to come. This brings us back to the test we might be facing right now. It's not just about developing the technology to reach other worlds. It's about becoming the kind of species that deserves to inherit the cosmos. And that's something each of us can contribute to, regardless of whether we ever personally travel to Mars or work in a genetics laboratory. Every time we choose cooperation over conflict, every time we support scientific research and space exploration, every time we think beyond our immediate needs and consider the long-term future of our species, we're helping to shape the kind of civilization we'll eventually carry to the stars. The ancient intelligence that may have seeded Earth couldn't guarantee that we'd make the right choices. They could give us the tools, encode the potential into our DNA, but ultimately they had to trust that when the moment came, we'd prove worthy of the gift we'd been given. So, where does all of this leave us? Standing at the edge of possibility, holding in our hands the tools to either fulfill an ancient promise or break a chain that stretches back billions of years. Whether Earth was planted by cosmic gardeners or life emerged through the blind dance of chemistry, we face the same fundamental choice. Do we remain earthbound, consumed by our divisions and immediate concerns, or do we reach for something greater? The evidence may never be complete. The cedars may remain forever hidden in the depths of time, but the question itself has already changed us. We're no longer just another species fighting for survival on a single world. We're potential inheritors of a cosmic responsibility, carriers of consciousness to new worlds, gardeners preparing to tend the next chapter of life's greatest story. The seeds of our future are already planted in our technology, our curiosity, our growing mastery of life itself. All that remains is the choice to honor what we've been given and ensure it continues to flourish among the stars.